All I wanna do is listen to music and chill up on every show. Up on every show. Up on every show.
It's so nice to be here again. Thank you all for having me and for your attention. This is my home and my family. It's so good to be here. And often when I come onto the stage, what I really like to do is just share with my family, share with you all what's been going on in my life and in my work lately, what I've been learning and what I've found interesting. So that's what I'd like to do here for the next 20 minutes or so. And to begin with, what's going on in all of our lives today is the summer solstice. And what a special time to be outside all day, celebrating the earth, celebrating being together. Today's a really powerful day, and I'll talk a little bit more about why. But just for a moment, everybody, as she goes down, let's say thanks to the sun for sustaining our life, the miracle of life. And it brings our attention to this pulsatile nature of life that we all live with all of the time. We have cycles of expansion and contraction, and cycles of the seasons, cycles through our day. And when I look at health and how health expresses itself in its optimal form, I see great harmony amongst these cycles at many levels. These are often called biological oscillators, and these are things that we can feel and experience in our body and observe in others. And when we see a person who is very resilient to the stress around them, that seems open to change, that seems healthy and vibrant and very fit and capable in their environment, there's often this sense of harmony amongst the various cycles, the various biological oscillations. So this is, for example, the heartbeat is going at a rate of maybe 60 beats per minute. And another biological oscillation is the breath, maybe 15 cycles per minute. And there's much slower cycles in the body, like the cycle of the cranial rhythm, which might be a couple or a few per minute. And even slower cycles of energy exchange in the body that can be several hours, and of course the circadian rhythm, the 24-hour cycle. And when we see the turnaround point of these cycles starting to line up, the fulcrums are aligning, there's much more efficiency and responsiveness in the system. So this is what we have today, the turnaround point, the lightest, longest day of the year, and then we're going to start contracting again. And will expand again, surely. It keeps going on and on like that. Now, there's also external cycles that I believe are also a part of good health. So it's if our heart rate and our breath are in synchronicity, or in synchrony, it's been documented and studied that there's lower mortality, there's lower heart disease, there's lower cancer in people that have this feature inside of them. And if we look at some of these external cycles, for example, cycles of children playing. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I've learned this, that we come together and play together for a little while, and then she'll go off and do her own thing. And then we come back together again. If I'm too busy or doing something else and I can't meet her when we come together, then she just keeps on needing that. But if I just meet her, then she'll go do her own thing. And so that's a cycle that we all have in our relationships as well. With our friends, with the people that we love, we expand and we contract. We come towards each other, we take breaks from each other. And honoring these natural pulsatile expressions in our life makes things really easy. If we accept them and we just roll with them in the direction of ease, then we conserve energy and we can become focused and effective in our lives, in our relationships, and in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits. This is also true of cannabis and our relationship with it. So we have this relationship with each other and a relationship with food and a relationship with our health. We have a relationship with cannabis. Most of us have this who are listening here today. And what a beautiful part of our lives that it touches us in so many different ways. This is a very complex and individualized relationship. And I suspect that, like all relationships that we've been talking about, there is a pulsatile nature to this relationship with cannabis. And I see this a lot in my patients. It's very often I'm talking to someone who, for example, cannabis has served them very well for years or even decades. Oh, could I have the water? Could I have some water? Thanks. For years or even decades, and helped with their symptoms and improved their capacity to live life to its fullest, and then all of a sudden one day something changes and they try to use the cannabis and it makes something worse. It makes them have some anxiety. Or it makes the pain worse where it used to make the pain better, or it used to help with the nausea and now they smoke and they get more nauseous or they're even vomiting. And I've found that's curious, and I've wondered why that happens. I've had that experience myself. Oh, I got some. Thanks, Fred.
Well, this is dosed.
This is dosed. Okay. Thank you. So afterwards, the exacerbation with the cannabis, got it. And so I see in these people, when all of a sudden the cannabis is making things worse for them, that they are in an opportunity to change. They're ready in a new part of their lives where maybe they didn't have the capacity to address that old emotional hurt, or didn't have the courage to embrace their pain, or to change their life or lifestyle, or change their relationship. And cannabis was helping them, but now they're ready, and so they can rely on the cannabis a little bit less to allow some type of change to occur in their lives, a healing process. And then they can resume using cannabis for its health promoting and adaptogenic and tonifying properties in the body. But this really brought my attention to the interrelationship between equilibrium and disequilibrium. Look, we'll talk after, because there's a lot of people listening. Let's talk. So systems theory is a concept in science that looks at very complex systems like neural networks and social networks and universes, galaxies. And it doesn't predict cause and effect, but just looks at trends in these systems. A very basic way of looking at life, that if a system is in total stability, if it's totally balanced, it actually loses its capacity to respond to changes outside the system, and it will eventually die. And then at the other end of that spectrum, if a system is in total chaos, it no longer functions as a system, and it will also die or dissolve. But somewhere in the middle, there's this great process of life and health and healing. And when I talk about healing, there's certainly healing that happens at the cellular level and homeostasis, and there's tissue healing if we get an injury or something like that. But I think when I see healing in my practice, and when people talk to me about their healing stories, what they're really talking about is a change. Something changes. It's a change of the patterns of thought and the patterns of behavior and the patterns of physiology all at once. It's a change in the way these biological oscillations are interacting with each other, and it's a change in the way the individual interacts with the pulsatile nature of life around them. And things become a lot easier, and energy becomes a lot more effective because it's not wasted by all this interference in the waveforms and all this psyche trying to get in the way. It's really a pure expression of life through an individual, and that's healing. And it doesn't bring someone back into perfect balance. It improves their fitness in the environment, but in order to have that change, in order to have that healing process, we need to have disequilibrium and equilibrium. This dance is what gives rise to new patterns. The emergence of new patterns of life, of thought, of health, of physiology, of behavior, comes from the dance of disequilibrium and equilibrium, or what some of us might call illness and wellness. So health is not just wellness. Health is a cycle that turns. It's a cycle of illness and wellness. And as people become ill and heal, they actually improve the fitness in their own environment. So getting back to cannabis, if this has happened for some people where their relationship with cannabis is suddenly changing, accept it, embrace it, and go with the flow just as you would with your relationship with your partner or lover or child or parents. It's a relationship that's going to change. It's going to have a expansion and a contraction phase. So embrace that with cannabis, and that's how we show the herb respect, and then it starts respecting us, and we get along so very well. So in some ways, whether we're talking about cannabis or any other herb or any other pharmaceutical, if we're using it to help with our symptoms, there's the potential that we're using it to suppress our symptoms. And that's often okay. Sometimes symptoms of illness are so strong that they can be debilitating, and it's okay to moderate them, modulate them, sometimes suppress them. But if we do that a lot with any type of medicine, we prevent the turning of the cycle of health and illness, of wellness and illness, the cycle of health. And I think that's what some people do with cannabis. And a lot of how we use cannabis to enhance this cycle has to do with dosing. And now I know a lot of you have heard me talk about dosage before. I'm going to give some new ideas and some new information today. Some of these ideas that I've been talking about today, I presented at a conference in Portland, Oregon, about a month ago. It was the annual clinical or cannabinoid conference, quite a big scientific research congress, and I met a lot of patients there that told me stories about what they're doing in different parts of the country using this as a medicine on the cutting edge, and a lot of it fits right into what I've been seeing in my practice, and I want to share a little bit of that with you, and I want to share with you what I had to present at that conference as well. So. One of the key traits of cannabis is that it has a dialectical or a paradoxical nature. So this means that in, say, 95% of the people, it can really help with anxiety, but in 5% of the people, it'll make anxiety worse. That's an example of a bidirectional effect. It does the same thing with almost all of the symptoms that it can help. In some people or in some situations, it'll make those symptoms worse. There's also a biphasic effect of cannabis, which means with the dose and the response. So at a low dose, some people get some benefits with cannabis. And as you raise the dose, you get more benefits. And as you raise the dose even more, you get even stronger benefits. And as you raise the dose even more, you get a little bit less benefits. And as you raise the dose even more, you get a little bit less. Now, this isn't always true in every situation, but this is a general trend that we've observed at the cellular level and at the individual level. I've often seen in my practice that a very low dose is effective for a lot of people to have some symptom relief without suppressing the symptoms, without suppressing the cycle of wellness and illness, the cycle of health. I think if you can use cannabis at a low dose and get great results with it, then staying at a low dose is often the best bet because it becomes a tonifying agent in our lives. It helps us deal with the normal, what has become the normal but very new environment that we're in, which is full of neurotoxins and carcinogens and anxieties and pressures and social stresses. So cannabis is wonderful at helping us deal with all of that. I believe that as we move into this earth change, most people will need to use cannabis in some form in order to maintain optimal health. And I suspect that's often going to be at low doses. But what I've seen with some patients that are severely ill, or even moderately ill, they don't do as well with the low doses, and they need higher doses. And I'm going to talk about what I mean specifically by low and high. This is something I've talked to a lot of patients about, thousands. And it seems to me like the high dose approach can almost be like a shotgun, or the way I think about it is a resuscitation of this system. that's gotten so depleted and so out of balance, it can really help the system kind of get back up on its feet and start functioning again, and then the dose can be lowered. So the high dose for a system that's overwhelmed. So here's some examples. Because of all the news stories, I've had the great pleasure and honor of taking care of about 25 very young children with severe neurological defects and seizure disorders. And these kids are having, sometimes 10, 20, or 60 seizures a day, and cannabis can really help them. It doesn't, in every case, make the disease completely cured or resolved, but it's in every one of these cases, it's offered some help. Now, the dosage that we're using in these children are often the results start in the range of 0.1 milligram per kilogram of body weight of total cannabinoids per day. That's a very low dose, 0.1 milligram. And another example on the other end of the spectrum is using cannabis to treat cancer. And I've talked with a number of patients who actually haven't been under my care, but at different conferences and different events that have healed from stage 4 cancer. And their dosages usually are in the range of 25 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So that's 250 times a larger dose than we're using for seizures. The versatility of this medicine is just incredible, that you can use it at such a wide range of doses without toxicity. It's one of the safest plants on earth. It's just, we have so much to learn from it, and there's so much possibility in this plant. And what a miracle life is when I see these kids coming back to the office and they're no longer in a wheelchair, but they're running down the hall. It's so beautiful to look in their eyes and see them present again. What an honor. It's just beautiful. The high dose for cancer is also applicable to other conditions. And I believe that one of those other conditions is very common here in Maine. And it's something that I really didn't know about until this past year, which is amazing because I've been trained as a physician and I'm licensed, and I've gone through the conventional training, and I've done a lot of alternative training in healing arts, and I was still clueless about something that so many people that are sitting on this field right here probably have had or have right now. And the reason I didn't learn about it is because Will started to talk about that. There's a lot of economic forces in medicine and involved in my training that influenced what I learned. But the condition is known as Lyme disease. And I think that word is kind of a vague term that is often used to describe tick-borne disease that may involve many different organisms. But I do want to take the time to talk about Lyme disease now with you all, because I hope to offer you some insight into something that a lot of us have in ourselves and in our families and certainly in our communities, but we might not understand it or know what it looks like or know how to recognize it. So this is what I've learned about Lyme disease just recently. And I've learned this from some experience that's very close to home and personal. First of all, Lyme disease is not new. We've only known about it in scientific terms for, since the 1980s. But it's evolved at least 5,000 years ago, probably a lot longer. We dug up this Tyrolean Iceman. I think he was about 3,000 years old, and he had Lyme disease in his knees. And he also had acupuncture points tattooed on himself, probably to help treat that. The bacteria that causes Lyme, Borrelia, is the most advanced bacteria on Earth. So what that means is it has more genes by far than any other organism in its kingdom. The genes of bacteria are little circles. They're called plasmids. They're rings of genes. The Lyme bacteria has 126 of them. The next most advanced bacteria in the world has 32. So this is a really adaptable organism. It can change its form and its shape and its function in order to infect arthropod like a tick, or a mammal, or a bird, or probably many other types of animals as well. So the modes of transmission, I just want to make you all aware that it's that little black-legged tick, the deer tick. And it's something that I really want you all to know what it looks like. I want you to watch them crawl around, get to know them. They're part of our lives, and you need to know them. It's really important to have a relationship with them so that you can find them and prevent them and see them and understand what they're doing to us. So I'm really a strong proponent of daily tick checks. And I want you all to know that tick checks are very, very fun if you want them to be. So think of someone you love, or someone that you think is beautiful, or someone that that you really want to make sure they stay healthy, and offer to check them for ticks. It sounds very strange, but it's going to keep us healthy as a community. It's really important. And in animals, it's been studied and proven that social grooming behavior is associated with better health and, check this out, with endocannabinoid levels increasing. I will, but
Who's gonna check me for ticks?
I'll check you for ticks after, or I'll find a volunteer. But thanks, thank you. We could have a group check down here by the stage after the next band, or during, so we could dance. But but the tick check, it's important. Wait, I think I might have skipped over something there. so yeah, a little distracted. But please enjoy the tick checks and really do them every day if you're out walking about in the grass. You don't have to be in the woods to get a tick. And it's just, we never really realize what a single tick bite can do to a person until it really brings them to their knees and makes them beg for their life. It's totally worth it to get these little things off of us if we can, and to prevent them. But I'm not telling you this to make you scared of going into the woods. Actually, going into the woods is really, really good for you. The solution to this problem that's all around us is not to avoid nature or to disconnect with nature. It's to harmonize with nature, to understand, to listen to honor, and to continue to interact with nature. And I'm telling you some ways of doing that. But here's what Lyme disease looks like in a person, because we've been living with it for so long without even noticing it. First of all, this bacteria in the body likes to eat and live in connective tissue. That's different from a lot of bacteria. It can do so without causing a big disruption of health. It can move through connective tissues. It's a little spiral-shaped corkscrew usually, and it can just screw its way through the connective tissue. It likes scar tissue. So that old shoulder injury or that old knee injury that suddenly starts hurting again, a lot of us, instead of thinking of why is this hurting again, we think, oh, now I'm 35 years old, or now I'm 62 years old, and this is what it means to age. And we just, kind of forget about that. Because at least half of the people that get Lyme from a tick don't have a rash. And also, a large portion of them don't get sick at all for a long time. It's very hard to connect it with the tick bite. So this is something that probably a lot of us have in our bodies all the time. And in a lot of us, it might be just mildly or moderately affecting our connective tissues. It also likes to live in the nerves. So not just joint swelling and joint aching that kind of comes and goes, but also strange sensations like tingling or pain or loss of function or weakness, muscle spasms. Those are some of the nervous system symptoms of Lyme in the periphery. And in the central nervous system, it often causes anxiety, insomnia, trouble finding peace and stillness, forgetfulness, loss of short-term memory, and in some people, impairment of cognitive function. In other people, it causes severe fatigue, and they don't know why, but they just have a hard time getting out of bed to face life, really low energy. It causes depression too. I mean, this is this is a very complex illness. There's often other organisms involved, other toxicities, other factors of life. It's not due to just one bacteria, but this one bacteria can really undermine the human ability to relate to compensate for environmental stressors. It can undermine our resilience to change in our environment. So the people that I've seen who have had Lyme really badly and gotten better from it, they all seem to have one thing in common, and that was an immense change, a change of patterns, and it's usually a spiritual change, and they often describe it that way, that Lyme taught them some of these big lessons. Lessons like how to embrace pain. Lessons like how to let go of the things they're attached to, including their own identity of who they were. Lessons of how to come to terms with their own mortality, how to embrace the inevitable death. And of course, once we embrace that inevitable death, we're able to live fully without any underlying anxiety and fully experience the moment. See, there's people clapping out here. This community often knows that lesson because I think they're taught by psilocybin mushrooms and other psychedelic medicines how to understand ourselves in the context of something that's much greater than ourselves, and understand our limited perspective and our limited time span, and also our unlimited nature, all at the same time. So what's really interesting is that cannabis can not only help with Lyme disease, but it can help with these lessons as well. The lesson of embracing pain. I think one of the main psychological attributes that people can learn from cannabis and then maintain even when they're not in the cannabis state of consciousness is that pain is a sensation. People tell me this all the time. They say, "Doc, you know, it decreases my pain to some extent, but even more than that, it makes the pain just less important. It makes it so that I'm not bothered by the pain. It makes it okay. I can deal with it. It's just in the background. It's not staring me in the face anymore and taking all my energy." And that is a lesson that exceeds the duration of the cannabis effect. And the next morning when we wake up, we still know how to kind of tune out that pain a little bit, or how to put it on the back burner. Because pain is a neutral sensation. And what most of us do, for good reason, when we feel it, is judge it as bad. So now we've added a layer of judgment around the pain, and now it's a bad pain. And then we attach some suffering to having to endure something bad because we have some ideas that life should be fair, or that something along those lines. And now there's judgment and suffering, and then we feel anxiety that there's even more pain coming. Anxiety that I'm never going to get out of this pain. And that anxiety brings us right into our anxiety around our own death and our own mortality. And that's really the primary feature of suffering. One of the main sources of suffering. So cannabis can help us learn these layers and peel them apart and realize that pain is neutral if we allow it to be, like all things in the universe. Cannabis can also help us let go of attachments. I think that's one thing that it's really quite easy to do. You know, like if I'm thinking I really want to do this thing, or I need to get this done for work or something like that, cannabis, we can let go of that very easily. But also I think it can help us let go of the hard things that we're attached to and realize that we can be at peace just within ourselves. So when the relationships are contracting away from each other, instead of chasing after that person, we can just sit and respond to that with acceptance and neutrality. And then cannabis can also help us come to terms with our mortality, like a lot of these other psychedelic substances can, in sometimes a less profound or a more gradual manner. But I do think that over time, it's helped a lot of us learn that lesson. And it's wonderful at the end of life for people that haven't learned that lesson and are facing death soon. Cannabis has really beautiful, incredible effects. So I want you to keep that in mind for yourselves and your loved ones. And that's often in very low doses, that it can ease the suffering and help with that transition. So we've said a lot here. I think I might wrap it up. So, in summary, this dialectical nature of cannabis, like all things in life, like the solstice and the seasons, and our bodies and our minds and our relationships, our physiology, our behavior. Keep that pulsatile nature, honor it, allow your lives to flow in the direction of ease. And thank you for being here on the hill to share with each other. And check yourselves and each other for ticks with love and excitement. And just to finish up the public health announcement, as I'm not so philosophical, if you see a red rash that expands in size over days, go straight to a doctor that knows what they're talking about and get some antibiotics. All the doctors that work with me can handle that. That's it, or if it's not antibiotics, then it's herbal approach, which is also at least as effective. But we have to do something. You don't need to wait for a test. Just that's what's called pathognomonic for Lyme. So you got to take care of that. And then also, if someone gets a fever in the summertime with migrating joint pain or any strange neurological symptoms, again, just come straight to one of the doctors that knows what they're talking about. That's really important to catch it early. It makes it much easier to take care of. So public service announcement. Thank you all.